Hey guys, with another one-take review, and today I want to talk about the new Redveil album, Learn to Swim. Redveil is a rapper who first got a good amount of attention after some kind of drama, I guess you can say, between him and Anthony Fantano of Needle Drop. It was just kind of this whole unnoteworthy thing that's unfortunately defined Redveil as an artist, or at least how people perceive him, which is a total shame because there is much more to his work than just a little bit of totally unnoteworthy discord with the internet's busiest music nerd. Learn to Swim is a great example of this, as it sees Redveil continue to develop his style, as well as being, even though he is very early on in his career, of course, I believe he's only 19, as I am currently recording this, I still do think that he shows insane amounts of potential to be truly one of the best in the game right now. Redveil's delivery is solid, though I won't say it's exactly the most notable part of the record. You probably won't walk away from Learn to Swim thinking, wow, that guy had a lot of, really aggressive delivery or a lot of particular personality about him. There's no extra aggression here, no extra personality, no extra, really, uniqueness about him here, to be honest. I mean, Redveil just kind of sounds like himself, Redveil, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just happens that himself is not necessarily the most standout artist within the rap game at the moment. That being said, there's no denying that what he does here, he does extremely well. There isn't a line out of place, and even on some of the weaker tracks that I'm just personally not a huge fan of, he still sounds solid in terms of actual performance. So even though you could maybe knock this album down a peg or two just based off of the fact that you probably won't walk away from it really remembering Redveil's actual delivery itself, I still do think there's something to be said about how effective he is as a rapper, which is very. Where Redveil truly shines, however, is actually on the production. He shines much more in this aspect and in this regard than he does as an actual rapper. His production style ends up really defining Learn to Swim in its overall sound and aesthetic, as it kind of creates these giant walls of sort of almost graceful noise that I think really end up, again, defining the album's sound and style overall. The way the very grand instrumentals on songs like Diving Board, for example, accompany his rapping are actually surprisingly fitting, and again, even though Redveil himself as a performer isn't necessarily the most standout rapper out there right now, he definitely works with the beats and productions that he gives himself extremely well. The songwriting here is actually a little bit above average as well. As long as you don't go into Learn to Swim expecting the lyrical intricacies of artists like MF Doom or Aesop Rock, I do think that Redveil delivers some very honest but still slightly humorous lyrics that are both introspective and very direct and to the point for the listener, that you don't really have to really sit down and dive into the music to overanalyze it to the point that it becomes slightly frustrating. It's something that you can easily adapt to, but at the same time, the lyricism that Redveil brings to the table is solid and extremely respectable as a rap lyricist, and arguably some of the better rap lyricism that I've heard come out of this year so far. Now, the only problem that Learn to Swim as a record faces is its middle section, and while that sounds like kind of a vague general thing, I mean that in the most literal sense. The middle portion of this record kind of drags down the rest of the album, the beginning and end. Songs like Shoulder and Better, they're perfectly fine, don't get me wrong, they're actually pretty decent tracks overall, but if you compare them to the first few or the last few tracks on the album, they totally lack the sense of energy that really makes, again, those first few and last few songs especially great. It doesn't help that there are unneeded guest verses and guest appearances from other artists on these songs that really ultimately serve no purpose, if I'm being honest. None of them are as directly engaging as Redveil is. Again, like I said before, Redveil's not the most interesting, but he is certainly very engaging, and he deserves credit in that regard. Whereas these other rappers, they aren't interesting, and they aren't really all that engaging either, in my personal opinion at least, and I think that, again, that's just more unneeded weight for these already not as great as the rest songs. Thankfully, by the time the track Morpheme pops up, we're back to where we began, with a lot of energy, a lot of passion being put into the music here, the production being great, the beats being very strong, but still that doesn't stop the fact that this middle section exists. It's sort of a legitimate trip up in an otherwise very strong journey, with a fantastic beginning and a almost equally fantastic ending as well. And if this middle section weren't here, it would have made an amazing EP, but as it stands, it's still a great album, don't get me wrong. It's not like this middle section ruins it or anything because it's god-awful. It's fine. It just doesn't really stack up to what you're led to believe the entirety of the record is going to be from the first 3 or 4 songs. So, overall, Learn to Swim is another album from Redveil that is consistently great, and also an example of why I think more people should actually be focusing on Redveil beyond his status as what many people seem to think of some sort of Earl sweatshirt copycat or something like that. I mean, personally, if you ask me, I think that Redveil is actually a little more interesting than Earl, but nonetheless, I digress. His delivery here is solid. Again, not really super noteworthy, but at the same time, you don't go into this expecting Danny Brown where you walk away and think, wow, that guy was super just like filled to the brim with personality. This isn't that, but it's strongly performed. The production is immaculate. The beats are strong, and even if the middle section on the record does kind of hold it back from being truly amazing, it's still a great listen that I would highly recommend whether you're casually into hip hop or you're a diehard fan of it. And with that, I'm going to give this record 4 stars out of 5. Learn to Swim, it has its weak points, but still, highly recommended. So yeah, 4 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that is the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next